There's been a lot of talk lately about a tiny change to the braking rules in Formula One racing that was added in the newest rulebook that came out at the end of July, and this has now officially hurt Red Bull in their fight to win the championship or keep defending their title. This change is about one extra sentence that was added to Rule Number 11 of the technical rulebook. At first, the rule said that the brake system must be built so that on each wheel the forces pushing on the brake pads are the same strength and push against each other on each brake disc. This rule and the way it's written means that the brake pads squeeze down on all four brake discs. The real brake balance number on the steering wheel, which is usually between 54% and 58%, shows how much of the total braking power gets sent to the front wheels. This means there's a difference in squeezing force from front to back, but it doesn't mean that the squeezing force on each brake disc on the same axle has to be exactly the same. That sentence stays the same, but in the new version of the rules that will start working from this weekend's Dutch Grand Prix and beyond, this has been added any system or trick that can make one side brake differently than the other side on purpose is not allowed. This new sentence says exactly what I just explained, and it's actually called torque steer after looking at the new rules. This might have been considered a gray area because there seemed to be nothing stopping torque steer before. Basically, the FIA is fixing a loophole in the current rules, something that people say was very, very helpful to Red Bull's cars in recent years. The steering rules are only about the steering wheel and how it connects with the steering parts, and then the front axle, with no room for making changes to the rear suspension, so four-wheel steering is not allowed. The rules are written by the FIA and F1, and the teams have to try to make their cars as fast as possible within those limits. In some cases, this means looking into gray areas, which, like with any set of rules, will get smaller over time. But changing them, like what's being done for 2026, would create a whole new set of troubling problems. It's definitely worth saying that the new braking rule was first included in the 2026 rules with the exact same words that appeared in the version released on June 24th, so it's likely that this wording came from the talks about the 26 rules and was then put into the current rules to make them stronger. When new rules are put in place, any problems found in previous ones are often fixed, but a bunch of new loopholes are usually created. So based on this new addition to the 2024 rules for the second half of the season, it seems that in those decisions for 2026, it was made clear that there is now nothing covering the torque steer possibilities. So what is the point of having a system that does something that is now clearly not allowed? There are obvious good things about having different braking pressure on either side of the car, especially when coming off the brakes. If one side is slower to release pressure than the other, it can cause torque steer, letting the car rotate. The turn-in phase is super important to any car's performance, and if you can tune it to make the car more responsive into slow corners, where these current ground effect cars tend to understeer, that might be really important, something Red Bull was good at until they probably had to change it around the time of the Miami GP. Torque steer would be pretty easy to set up since you could use a one-way flow restrictor to slow down the release of braking pressure on one side. It could be done on either the front or rear axles, but the rear would be more useful because the inside rear tire doesn't work as hard during the turn-in phase. In other words, it lets full braking fluid flow when the pedal is pressed, but slows down the flow when you release the brakes on one side. This will cause drag on that corner of the car, letting it rotate as a result. You would have to pick your problem corners and figure out whether they all went the same direction, left or right, and set it up that way. We don't know for sure if anyone was using a system to cause uneven braking, but rule changes like this are often introduced when a team asks for clarification, usually because of suspicions or to stop a team from doing so in the future. Or maybe it just came up as a good idea when working on the 2026 rules. If any team was taking advantage of this possible loophole and can no longer do so, it might have a big impact on performance, especially in slower corners and in such a competitive sport. That might make a big difference in the pecking order, and this is exactly what happened to Red Bull in recent months around the same time. The question about this particular rule came up, so people were quick to point a finger at Red Bull for probably using this trick, and just recently former F1 hopeful Robin Friesians has claimed he has also heard the FIA made Red Bull change something on the RB20 and that's responsible for the team losing speed, but he couldn't tell what they found or what rivals complained about, but you can make a guess by now, right? Although Red Bull started the season by continuing where they left off in 2023, winning 4 of the first 5 races. Max Verstappen has only won 3 of the past 9 Grand Prix. Instead, McLaren has had its time at the top of the timesheets with the fastest car on the grid, while Mercedes has lately come out winning, taking 3 of the previous 4 races. Red Bull keeps the lead in both championships because of their early season dominance, but McLaren has cut the gap to 42 points in the Constructors, while Lando Norris is 78 points behind Verstappen in the drivers' standings, with Verstappen on a 4-race winless streak. Coming into his home race in Zandvoort, Friesians feels there's more to the problem than just McLaren and Mercedes winning the development battle. What's going on at Red Bull? The Dutchman writes in his Formula One magazine column in terms of why did they lose so much speed all at once. According to the Spanish media, the FIA discovered a problem, or other teams complained about a specific part of the Red Bull car forcing changes. That's why they lost so much speed. I wouldn't be surprised if that's true, because in Formula One things are fierce between the teams. Everyone is watching each other. That's what makes the sport so much fun. I think every team tries to discover the gray areas in every field. Look at Mercedes, who suddenly came up with the DAS system a few years ago that was a, let's say, dark gray area, but things like that are what make Formula One so interesting. While he kept his belief that Red Bull needed to improve something about the car, it will be tough to catch up with the front competitors again. But how could this all happen? According to Dr. Helmut Marko, a Red Bull advisor, it's because the RB20 is a beast that only Max Verstappen can control at the start of the season. We had a car that was as balanced as the McLaren. Marko said it could handle all tracks and all conditions. Then we took a wrong turn somewhere. The car has become a beast that only Max can control. Marko continued, they made the car more and more unpredictable. It became more and more difficult to set it up and balance it. Perez has been nowhere since. Red Bull's recent difficulties started with even Verstappen having run into struggles in Hungary. Despite being forced to wrestle the RB20, the defending world champion got the fastest qualifying time in Austria and Belgium by a big margin. Marko praised Verstappen's Q3 performances in those 2 countries, comparing the Austrian team to Mercedes earlier in the season. Those were special qualifying laps from Max. Marko said in the race the superiority was gone. Like Mercedes at the beginning of the year, we are sometimes fast and sometimes slow, depending on the conditions, sometimes even in the same race as in Silverstone where it rained in between. Verstappen has failed to win in his previous 4 races and has only 1 podium finish since winning the Spanish Grand Prix. Marko talked about some of the challenges that the 3-time world champion has faced. We are better than our last results, Marko claimed. Without the bad pit stop in Spielberg, the collision with Hamilton in Hungary, and the grid penalty in Spa, Max would be in a better position. What are your thoughts? Did Red Bull use a gray area trick on their brakes at the start of the season, and had the FIA clamped down resulted in troubles for them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.